Hey, folks, glad to have you back again here. We are reinvigorating the interview series here at Steve Weiss. We got the cool new studio happening here at King Gong Studios, of course. So it's my turn to jump in here. We'd like to bring you as the best people in the business as we can. We're also looking to kind of lean toward the educational side and talk about folks that are, teaching at the drum corps level, teaching in high school, teaching in the classroom, whether it's concert, marching, whatever it may be. And today we got a treat for you because we have somebody who somehow has his hands in all that all at one time. So we'll get to the list of accolades because that could be a while. But he's been very successful in all that he's done. I'm glad to have him here. Mr. Joe Hobbs. Joe, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, Joe has kind of quite a list, quite a resume. One of the best things about Joe is that he's so well-rounded. Those of you that are considering, maybe being a teacher in a school, if you're thinking about being an instructor, a teacher, or designer in the marching world, whether that's high school, drum corps, indoor, that kind of thing, you've got a guy here that's done all of that at a very, very high level. He's just coming off of presenting at PASIC. His marching band won the UIL championship in their group this year. He's been up to the Macy's Day Parade this year, amongst some other things that's been happening. He's at Vandegrift High School and all the things that he's involved in. We'll get into it all. So, Joe, tell me real quick just how you got started. I'd like for folks to know how you got started in percussion. So if that's where they are, or if a teacher is looking to mentor someone that wants to kind of do some of the things that you've done, give them an idea how you got your start just with percussion.
Yeah, I started, I think, what most people do in sixth grade. So I was 11. I actually wanted to play guitar. And my parents made a deal and said, you can get a guitar once you join sixth grade band. So I was kind of forced into it begrudgingly. So joined band, got picked for percussion and just fell in love with it. So I got the guitar at Christmas, my sixth grade year, and I was excited. And then it just collected dust in the corner for the next 7 to 8 years. So I just fell in love with it. But yeah, I started when I was 11 years old. I'm from Kentucky originally, Murray, Kentucky, super small town. Kind of in the western part of the state. So small band program. I think we had about 60 kids in our band program at the high school. And then went to Murray State, which is in the same city. My mom is a teacher. So she was the dean of the College of Health Sciences at Murray State. That's why I ended up going there. So the tuition for me was super cheap, with my mom working there and scholarships. So that's kind of ended up. So I went through that program and then marched drum corps as well, marched Southwind from Kentucky when they were back in Kentucky at the time, 01, 02, 03, and then marched Cavaliers 04, 05, 06. And then just kind of went into teaching right after that and taught in the Nashville area for a couple years right out of college. And then taught in Kentucky, the Lexington area for a couple years, and then came down to Texas. I think 2012 was my first year in Texas. So it's, I guess, year 10 since I've been down here. So, yeah.
Awesome. So you talked about getting into DCI after you marched, just getting into teaching. I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been on staff with Phantom Regiment, you've been in Cavaliers, you've been at Bluecoats, several places, right?
It's been a passion. I mean, I feel like I knew I was pretty fortunate. I feel like I knew at a young age I wanted to teach.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably when I was 14 years old, maybe that's weird. At the time it made total sense, but for me it was like, I want to be a teacher. So I knew to get more education, I needed to go past my high school program. That's why I went to drum corps. I wanted to kind of go up a notch. And then obviously I did that. When I was marching, there was always in my mind, I always knew I wanted to teach drum corps too. That was always part of it. I knew that was kind of what I wanted to do. So, when I aged out in 06, was when I aged out of Cavaliers. I actually did some camps for the Cavaliers in 07. It was a fresh age out and went in way over my head. I didn't tell the other staff that, but I remember thinking, like, I don't know how to do any of this. I thought I did, but at the time I didn't. And then a good friend of mine, Eric Willie, who's a percussion professor at University of North Carolina, Greensboro,
Sure.
would help out with Murray State at times with the drumline stuff. So he called me in 07, and he was going to write for Southwind, who was still in Lexington at the time, and asked if I would help teach. And I said, absolutely. That was something I knew I always wanted to do. And so that was the first gig, was just knowing Eric. And then that gig led to other gigs because Shane Gwaltney, who teaches at City Mystique, he was the battery rider for that year at Southwind. Josh Nelson, who's the director at Mystique, was the bass tech for, I think, one camp. Several friends that I taught with for several years after that were at that Southwind staff. So it just started there. And then that staff kind of traveled. So Southwind folded in 07
Right.
after that season. So that staff went to Spirit. And then after 3 years, that staff got picked up by Phantom Regiment. So I was moving from drum corps to drum corps, but kind of following the same group of people each year.
Yeah.
So.
That's cool though. So just to get like the nitty gritty part of it, for you to get that first gig, it was just a matter of you having that relationship with Eric first. And then he kind of saw that promise in you and said, hey, I could use some help with this section, that section. Would you be willing to come on board? Because I know a lot of folks are kind of wondering, how do I get into that? How do I get that break? What do I do to make myself valuable? Is that pretty much how it worked for you?
That's how it worked for me, you know, and I get asked that question a lot on like, what should I do? I want to be a teacher and I want to get in the drum corps. And my answer is always, when you're younger, just say yes to everything. You know what I mean? Because you just need the hours, you know, the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing. You know, I think there's definitely truth to that. So I think the best thing you can do for yourself is just teach as much as you can, you know, and don't be afraid to reach out to staff members too, you know, like make those connections, find a mentor as well, you know, and maybe it's a mentor, you know, maybe it's someone you don't, maybe it's someone in your school district, maybe it's someone a few cities over, but find someone that's doing a really good job at what you want to do and reach out to them, have lunch with them once a week. But I think it's like any job, it's kind of about connections, you know what I mean? And the more you say yes as you're younger, the more connections you're going to have. And at some point that will lead to a gig, especially if you keep doing good work. You know what I mean? Yeah,
for sure. But I think the part of it that you said where, you know, don't be afraid to kind of, I don't want to say market yourself, but don't be afraid to just befriend somebody or mention, hey, this is what I'd like to do. Because for me, it was a very simple thing. I had my high school group, was fortunate to be at an indoor show where we were being judged by some of the biggest names at the time. Tom Hungst was there, Ralph Hardiman was there, Tom Hannum was there, Matt Savage was there. So, I mean, the best panel you can imagine. And I'm teaching my kids, and we had a pretty cool cymbal line at the time. And I just was like, you know, Tom and especially Matt had said, hey, man, you do a great job with these kids. They're doing a nice job, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, if you ever need a cymbal instructor, let me know. Well, that was the year that Matt and Jay Webb took over Dutch Boy, which being from Philly was not terribly far away. And I ended up on the Dutch Boy staff as a cymbal tech, just simply because I threw it out there. So I you know, it's a big part of it sometimes.
Well, and I think you don't, when you're younger, you look at you idolize these people in the activity and you think they're untouchable. They're not human sometimes. And I think once you get to know them, I think they're all human. They all have their insecurities, but they want, first and foremost, they're teachers, you know, and they want to help you and they want to help you out. Some of them are busier than others. It might take a while to get back to you in that email or that text or whatever. But I know now I still reach out to people. You know, I wrote a standing lunch, you know, every week with Rick Rodriguez, who teaches down the road at Cedar Ridge. And I look up to Rick as a teacher. You know, I think his groups are fantastic. He's a guy that I ask questions and I reach out to, but I'm still in that process, you know. And it's funny, you mentioned Tom Hongst. I know we're going to get to this, but at Music City Drum Corps, Tom was hired to be the music ensemble guy there. And I didn't know Tom before this process, and we hung out at a design meeting. This past camp, we hung out, and another guy that I'm just constantly, I want to be around. I want to ask him questions. I want to pick his brain, and I'm still trying to surround myself with mentors and people that are older than me that have had huge amounts of success, so I can, again, get as much information, steal as much as I can, you know, to make myself a better teacher.
Absolutely. And you had said that they're all teachers, and it's really important to them. It's not about obviously about their chops. They're always good, and they have connections, I suppose, you know, that get them to certain things or get it started. But in the end, like you said, they're all teachers. So that's what's intriguing to me about you, is that you've achieved a high level in a lot of aspects of percussion, especially relative to education. So tell me a little bit about your role. You're at Vandegrift High School in Texas. I know you mentioned you've been there about 10 years. What is your role there exactly? And tell me a little bit about that program. I mean, for those of us on the outside looking in, it couldn't be better.
Yeah, it's a fantastic program. This is actually, so I moved to Texas. I first moved to Dallas. I was at Newman Smith High School, and then I moved to Vandegrift in 2016 was my first year there. So that my math is right. This is year 7. It all blurs together at a certain point. But this is year 7. But it's a great program to be at. The school's still pretty young. Like I think it was founded in 2009. So still kind of, as a school, it's still kind of in its infancy. But it was opened by some great teachers. Jeremy Spicer was the first head director there, with Mike Howard as the assistant. Both have been teaching in Texas for a couple of years. I think they were able to kind of look at programs they'd been at and then kind of pick what they liked and didn't like. And with the opportunity to open a new school, they were kind of able to create their own culture and kind of what they valued. They were able to put that first and foremost. The principal is fantastic. It's the same principal that's been there since the school opened, Charlie Little. Super supportive, and I mean, routinely says in faculty meetings, the band is the biggest part of the school and the most important part of the school, which is it's unique. So that I think Vandegrift is very special because of the way it started, the culture, and again, administrative support, the community support. But it's just a great place to be. And like I said, my role is percussion director. So I do the percussion at the high school. We have 2 middle schools that feed into our high school. One is right across the street. So I see those kids, the beginners, I see them every single day. And then I do pullouts for the wind ensemble and symphonic band twice a week. We have another guy named Tim Schuster who does a fantastic job. Works with the other middle school that's kind of about 15 minutes away, a little bit farther down the road. He does the same thing. So those beginners, I think we'll get this as well. Those beginners get someone in front of them every single day that is a percussionist. They can kind of teach them those skills. But that's kind of my role at Vandegrift.
That's awesome. So seeing that you do so much with that, and I know you just gave a great presentation at PASIC this year. What is it that you think we're doing right and we're doing wrong as far as percussion education? And the reason I'm asking you that, or to kind of expand on that a little bit, I always talk to folks that are from Texas, and I ask, what is it about Texas that makes it work? And it's always the same answer. So I'm going to take away the easy answers from you. It's always the support, the support, the support. And I think that obviously that is the key. But just like any good music program, once you set a culture, you set a level of expectation, let's say your least best player that comes into that program, whether they're a freshman or they're a drum corps kid that's trying for the first time, that threshold that they know they have to cross just to hang with the group is built up so high that it's almost self-fulfilling in that it helps to keep itself going. So with you guys having the support that I know you have there, and that expectation kind of set just simply because of the state that you're in and the folks that have come before you, what is there things that we're missing still, not necessarily nationally, or is there some things you could point to that you think that music education with a percussion focus is doing really well, and things that you think we could do better with?
Yeah, I think to be Texas specific, I don't know if that's what you want or not, but I think the biggest difference in the support is the common answer. I think, again, it's that I get to see those beginner kids every single day. I feel like by the end of 6th grade, the kids I'm teaching probably are getting more information than I got my entire middle school career. And that is not a slight at all to my middle school band directors, and I was not the easiest kid to teach. So God bless those guys for putting up with me and my nonsense. But it was, my situation, I think, is similar to most people's, which I had a middle school band director who taught the entire middle school band at the same time. And we're all reading out of the Essential Elements book, and I'm in the back of the class, goofing off most of the time, and not really, and they're doing their best. But the difference to me between what I grew up with in Kentucky, which I think is kind of the norm in most states, versus what I do now, again, I just have so much more individual instruction with these kids. And I've got 11 kids in my beginner class at the middle school that I teach at full time, and I can give them individual feedback. I can go down the line and say, play me your buzz roll, too tight, losing your fulcrum. And I can give them that specific feedback, just something that my middle school band director couldn't do. And I think most middle school band directors just can't do. They can't go down the line, each individual kid, so the instruction I get and the curriculum I'm able to do, again, being by myself and being percussion heavy, like we can do all those things and cross tees with accessories. We can learn all of our scales pretty quickly. We can go through rudiments. We can go through more advanced rhythms that apply specifically to percussion. You know what I mean? Like rhythms you would see in a march. We can give them all this information just so much sooner. To me, that's what separates, the two things. And I think there's fantastic teaching. And I'll make fun of Texas for a second. I know people look at inside Texas, so like, we've got it all figured out. we're all just great teachers, and that's what it is. And there was fantastic teaching outside of the state of Texas, 100%. And I think those people sometimes look at Texas and say, why can't I achieve that? And I think the deck is a little stacked because, again, what those kids are getting from percussion and trumpet is a trumpet class. We have beginner trumpet class, beginner tuba class, beginner flute class. You know what I mean? Those kids are getting individual instruction just so much sooner. And I think that's the difference to me, at least.
Sure. And I want to tread lightly here about those that are not in Texas, because having grown up outside of Texas, and I've been fortunate enough to see a lot of what happens around the country by virtue of this job here and working for another educational music company as well. And again, not to tread too heavy on those folks, but I sometimes find myself wondering, why hasn't it caught on? I mean, to the degree that Texas is ahead of the rest of the music education world, it's unbelievable. Now, granted, there's great programs in pockets all over the country.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it does seem like they do the same things that make them great programs that Texas has in numbers like crazy. So I'm just wondering, do you think it's like, what is it that makes it not catch on? Is it just that, that music just isn't important enough? I mean, it surprises me that more programs haven't looked at Texas and said, if everyone can do it down there to the degree that they do, why is it that in some cases there's 40 other states in the country that don't have one band that is, half as good as the kids in that? Like, why is it not catching on?
I think it's just your priorities as a school district.
Yeah.
And as a state. And
simple as that.
And I think that's all it is. And I think for some reason, and I don't know the answer, I'm a benefit, I benefit from the answer, but at some point Texas said, we value this. We value fine arts, and we're going to put a lot of money into that. And you saw, the expanse of the directors. That's the other thing is, obviously at my high school, there are 4 band directors, like granted, we have almost 400 kids in our band program. So that's still that student to teacher ratio is still pretty off, but we have 4 directors, and again, when I went to high school, we had 1 high school band director, and that's what it was. Yep. I do think part of it is fueled by Texas football, a little bit. I think there was a time in the early 90s, late 80s, especially when football was huge, and you would see this giant marching band, and the community would say, like, well, we want that too. Well, what do you need? I need more band directors. Great, we'll get you another band director. I need money. I need this and that. And I think, that's what I've been told. Again, I'm not a native Texan, but that's kind of what I've been told, that Texas football did kind of fuel that a little bit. And that's kind of the reason we got more directors, we got more funding, and maybe it was valued a little more than other states.
Sure. So for all the greatness that is music education in Texas, percussion wise, is there something you feel like we're not doing as a whole, as an industry, if you will, to prepare the students, or is there something a direction you think it needs to go in?
That's tough. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I will say this. I think, to go to positive again, I think kids are playing literature that is mind blowing at this point. Go back to that. I think about what I was doing in my college and what I was doing in high school and what these kids are doing now, and it's hard to even fathom, honestly, the level of literature these kids are playing. So I think in terms of setting them up, if they choose to do music down the road, I think these kids are set up incredibly well. I'll say this for us, we don't have a ton of that, honestly. A lot of our students, we have a lot of engineers, a lot of pre-med, a lot of students that are not going the education route and going more into those fields. Technology is big in Austin, so we have a lot of parents that are in the technology business, and these kids are kind of going into that. But in terms of things we could do better, I think, I wouldn't say it's Texas specific. I just think for directors that are outside of Texas, I think just do what makes sense for your program. I think sometimes people look to larger programs, whether it's Texas or those pockets you talked about. I think of Indianapolis, it's that's got a ton of great band programs. And they look at these programs that are spending, a large amount of money on marching band, and maybe they're a smaller band program and they're trying to spend the same amount of money or do those things to try and compete. And I would just urge them to do what makes sense for your program. You know what I mean? And maybe that program on the outside looks like it's great because they're winning stuff, but I don't think winning is necessarily a great barometer for whether the program's successful or not. I think what you want is to see kids join band in freshman year and make it through senior year. You want to see continuity. You want to see a large program that's healthy. You want to hopefully see kids go on to major in music or go to education, or have their kids when they get older be in the band program because that's such a great experience. But just be true to yourself and be true to your program, because every community is not set up to be a 400-person band program. It's just not, and that's okay. But that'd be my thing, is just be true to yourself. That's one thing I feel like I see when I judge sometimes, and you see a group push out all these props and they spent thousands of dollars. And then, no offense, the kids don't play super well. And it's like, that should have gone, maybe that money should have gone towards instruction or creating a private lesson program or music technology class. So things that fit your program better than dropping $20,000 on props to be more competitive in the fall. So,
Sure.
anyhow.
Yeah, it's on one hand, it's kind of a shame that it's so simple to, the basic tenets of what needs to be done. We just need to get more folks on board to do it. So the example though that you're setting at Vandegrift and with your success at the Bluecoats, congratulations for the High Percussion Award this past summer. And I know you're moving on to or you're joining the team, as you had mentioned earlier. We had Music City for the drum corps. So speaking of that, and as a pathway for some of the students to go to, how do you see that activity supporting what's done in the schools? Is it still the place that it used to be to go to? And the reason I ask is because it's difficult with, obviously we came through COVID and that created a whole bunch of problems, but it really is, there's such a vast difference between the folks that are kind of at the top of the game, even, budget wise and things like that. And those that are kind of struggling. And now that there is a sensitivity to things like COVID, are we going to be sleeping on gym floors again as much as we did before? Where do you see that going? Do you see it that it's going to survive because of the kind of people that are in it? Do you think it needs to change or will change just in terms of the model of like a DCI?
Don't know. I think it's a tough, I know there's Dan Atchison's retiring soon. And I think that's going to be a big change for the activity. I think it's going to have to change because the cost. I think housing, you brought it up. I think housing is the biggest challenge right now. Is what I understand. I'm not a core director, but that's kind of what I hear is housing has been the hardest thing to find, and cores having to pay for housing. 10, 15 years ago, you stayed at a high school and it was a high school band director had a connection to the drum corps, and you just came in and crashed on your gym floor, rehearsed in the stadium, and you were good to go. I think now most high schools or most places you stay are asking for some sort of compensation. And I think that really has driven up the cost quite a bit. DCI is obviously shortening the season a little bit this year. Shows are starting, later in the summer. I think that's helpful. I think they're trying to be smart in terms of geographically where shows are. So of course they're having to put less miles on, to complete a full summer. So I think they're already trying to kind of create some changes to help with the longevity of the activity. But I'm concerned. I think we all are. I think we saw, the Vanguard announcement, a little while ago, and I think it shook all of us. I think that's fair. But I will always have a deep love for drum corps, knowing what it did for me as a person. I just think there are very few things that challenge students the way the drum corps does. Not just from a musicianship standpoint, but just from a physicality standpoint, from a mental tenacity standpoint. I just feel like there's so much character development within that activity, and I know for me, being able to just leave my home and focus on being great at something for 3 months was just life-changing, to shut off the outside world. This is pre-cell phones because I'm getting older. But just to be able to have that focus and learn what that focus feels like, I just think it is life-changing. So I think there's so much merit to the activity. I hope we figure it out, but I think changes are coming. I don't know what they are, but I know all of us have the best intentions to kind of find those solutions so we can keep the activity going.
Sure. Did you, you mentioned that you leave home for 3 months. And so tell me how that works with home. I know you have your wife, Kara, I believe she does interior design. You've got a daughter. Is that right too?
I do. Yeah. 5 years old in kindergarten.
Awesome. So how does that work? You spend a lot of time doing a lot of different things as we've been talking about. How does that all fit with home? Are they the kind that like going with you and doing things like that? Or are they just kind of like, that's dad's thing. That's the hubby's thing. I'm out.
I think it depends. I think as my daughter gets older, it gets tougher and tougher, to be transparent. I think now that she's at the age, she recognizes it. She says, "Daddy, you going again?" It's like, yeah. So it gets tougher. You know, we're trying to be creative about it. You know, I think my wife understands that, you know, drum corps and teaching and judging and all the stuff that I like to do, you know, within the percussion community, it's a huge passion for me. And it's kind of where I feel normal, you know, like I'm not a handyman at all. I'm worthless around the house with that stuff. But when I walk into a rehearsal and drum corps, like if the metronome's on, I know what to do. You know what I mean? Like that makes sense to me. And I think she knows that and supports it, but there are times that it's tough, you know. I did a lot of tour last summer. At least what I've been doing, you know, I did about 3.5 weeks of Bluecoats. And then with, you know, some vacation stuff, I just wasn't home a whole lot. You know, we took a vacation together, my wife and I did. We went hiking in Europe, so we tried to do stuff. But this summer I'm going to kind of scale back. We had a Music City camp, I guess 2 weeks ago. And they came with me. Both my daughter and my wife flew in. She's a really good friend that's in Nashville. So try to do that when I can, you know, and I'll be still doing a little bit with Bluecoats this summer too. But I'm trying to scale back a little bit, trying to find the balance. And I think anybody could probably say the same thing. You know, you're always trying to find the right balance between work and home. You want to be good at your job. You want to be a good husband. You want to be a good father, and also be good to yourself, you know, which I think is something people like forget about. You know, you're part of the equation too. But just trying to find that balance. So we're still working on it, but I can't thank you enough for the support. You know, it always means the world to me. You know, they're always there for me, and it's awesome.
Yeah, well, and speaking of support, like we love that, you know, that your school, several schools in the area, and folks that we have on here sometimes that are doing as many great things as you're doing in percussion are supporting Steve Weiss music. And I want to ask you a little bit about that. And forgive me, I know for those that are watching, it's self-serving, but it's not really a commercial for Steve Weiss music. We love your business, but more importantly, what's the value of a percussion specialist retailer to you? Because there are, again, a lot of programs out there that use fine music companies that aren't necessarily a specialist in the area. They're, you know, they're good at a lot of things. So how does that play, again, in your backyard in Texas there, having a specialty retailer, whether it's a brass person or, you know, in our case, percussion?
Yeah, well, I'll brag on you guys, and I wasn't paid for this, you know, but I'll brag on you guys. You guys have been great. I think for me, the biggest difference is being a percussionist. I know that when I call and I order something, you guys know what I'm talking about. And that just makes all the difference in the world. And there have been times I've called and said, you know, I'm looking for this. Well, that's out of stock, but here's a great option that's pretty much the same thing. Maybe this brand. You guys have an in-depth knowledge of the gear. So if something's not there, you guys can help me out and find that second option if I need to. You guys have also been great about having stuff in stock. You know, I think that's, you know, and I won't name it. We used other companies that, you know, before we came to you guys a couple of years ago. And a lot of times stuff wasn't in stock, you know, and at times you would order something and you would get the order and you realize 7 of the items are back ordered. You know, something you guys have been great about is I feel like when I'm on the phone and I place an order, I will be told immediately this is not in stock and it'll take this long to get here. And that again is just such a comfort to me. Like, oh, that's not in stock. Well, what is another option? And you can help me find that option. So having that, again, that content knowledge of what you're selling from a percussion standpoint, and then again having the stuff in stock ready to go. And then lastly, you guys are crushing it on shipping. In terms of like, I feel like I order it and in 2 days or so, you know, it's going to be at my school and it's going to be there. And that's just not the same for every company I've dealt with. So like I said, I'll brag on you guys. I think you guys have been awesome to work with. And then we started using you guys exclusively probably about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. It's been great. You guys have been awesome to work with.
I appreciate it. I think that it's important for programs to hear that having that specialist. I mean, yes, it's again, like I said before, it's going to help our business, but it's not really why I'm going down this road. I just think that creates a certain amount of importance on it, just like it does to create the support that you're saying that happens in Texas. When you value what your, you know, is your drum guy that you hire, when you value that person because maybe you're a band director who's not a percussionist, when you give that person the opportunity to get the best possible service with somebody that speaks their language, it can only help the program. So I would love to see, obviously, for a business, you know, a kick for our business. It would be great to have more folks turn to that. But I also think that your students are going to get so much more out of it because it's difficult. It's difficult sometimes for a woodwind player to teach their brass class because it just doesn't come as natural to them. So I'm glad to hear that we're doing a great job. I hope that more people will, come to Steve Weiss or these other specialty retailers that can really, help your program aside from just the great relationship that we have. And thank you very much for saying that.
Yeah.
I do appreciate it.
Well,
And I wanted,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say one more thing too. I think, I think some people look at it too, and I think I had the same thought. You guys are on the East Coast, which I'm in Austin, Texas, halfway across the country, that there would be a gap in service or that would be more difficult because of where you guys are located geographically. And I'll say it hasn't been at all. I think a lot of people use the dealer or use companies that are down the road from them, because it almost feels like that makes more sense. But I'll just say that for me dealing with you guys, it's never been an issue. Again, mainly because the shipping is so good. It's in 2 days. It's there, quicker. And again, you guys have such a vast array of instruments and mallets in stock. Teaching in Kentucky or Tennessee and using those local dealers, they were banned. They did all the band. They didn't have all the percussion stuff in stock. You know what I mean? They had like the main, the SD ones, you know what I mean? Those were always ready to go, and the general tipping mallets. But if I wanted anything from a special type of mallet or a specific thing, it's just kind of a long wait time. And again, with you guys, because you're a percussion specialist, you have it, it's ready to go, and it's going to be on my doorstep in 2 to 3 days. So
awesome.
Enough of the plug. I feel like I'm overdoing it, but I really do appreciate what you guys do for us.
Well, one of the things that so now I get the plug. One of the things that we have amongst our the world's largest percussion sheet music and method book collection up here is the starting line, your rudimental snare book. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it came from a few places, from necessity, honestly. Something that I ran into, and I think I ran into it when I was in Kentucky and Tennessee a lot, was I would get asked to come in and do a master class or to do a pullout for a concert band. And I would just have such a range of talents within the room. I'd have the center snare from the drum line, and then the pit kid, the marimba kid who was a great marimba player but couldn't play snare drum. And it was always a challenge if I'm supposed to do fundamentals, how am I supposed to teach to both those kids at the same time? And have them have a decent experience. And it's just really hard to do. So the idea kind of came from that. If I were able to write a collection of solos and have 3 versions of the same solo. So the way the book is kind of written out is there's the gold version, which has all the ornamentation, the flams, the rolls, diddles, buzzes, all that stuff is here. And then the silver, the bronze version is everything with just the check pattern, just the basic rhythms. So again, the idea was allowing that a kid who's a fantastic snare drummer, a kid who's not a very good snare drummer at all, could be in the same class, working on the same material at different levels. And the other part of it too was and we do this with our beginner class, we do our solos at the end of the year. I just like going through the process of showing a kid how to break down a solo. You know what I mean? Like, this is how you start. You start with the check patterns. You start with the fundamental rhythm and you play with the metronome, make sure that's good to go. Then we add in the rolls. And I think the middle version a lot of times is there to break down like the roll notation. I think a lot of times you get into middle school and they hand you music and the roll notation is the shorthand notation, the quarter note with the dashes. And the kid's like, what does that mean? How many rolls are how many buzzes are in that roll, or how many diddles are in that roll? So the silver version just writes all the rolls out. So it's longhand notation. They can see like, oh, it's 4 16th notes inside that quarter note roll. So helping connect those dots for kids that I think don't always get connected. So that's kind of the idea. Like I said, the first solo is super easy. It's the one we use at Vandegrift for the beginner class at the end of the year. And it kind of progresses. The first couple are real kind of middle school based, 6th, 7th grade idea. And then like kind of solos 3, 4, 5, and 6 are more like 8th grade, freshman, sophomore year. And the last couple solos a little more for like that senior or that junior, they're really strong players. So again, it's just trying to break it down. I feel like I've never had a book that showed me how to break something down. Like exercises, but never like, how do I teach a solo? Like, how do I teach this etude, and how would I break down an etude? And is again, just trying to connect those dots for kids and teachers too.
Yeah, it's a great book. So for anybody that's not aware of it, hasn't tried it, the starting line, and check it out, because whether you're a percussionist band director or a non-percussionist band director, it's coming from, a great source in Joe with all that we've talked about, today that he's doing in the activity and as a percussionist and as an educator. But at the same time, it might be different than what you're doing. It might challenge you as a teacher to look at how you teach your kids in a different way. So check out the book because it really is good, like Joe said, for all different levels. And that's hard to find. Sometimes you get a book and you're like, my kids can't play this, or this is too easy. They're just going to fool around in the back of the room. So this book does a lot of things, classroom management, as well as building the kids' ability.
There should be a chapter on that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think there should be.
And I did my best. And when I wrote it, I think I did my best to write it from a teacher perspective. It's meant for students to get as well if they want, but it's hard for me to separate. Like when I'm writing, I'm like, what would I want as a teacher to be in this book? And so like each solo has like supplemental exercises that go before it, like breaking down difficult measures or introducing a rudiment, like how do you break down a flammecue or things like that. Like, I guess it's meant to be sequenced for the teacher as well. Like I said, I don't know, trying to give it back. And it's my COVID project. You know what I mean? I thought about it for years. And when COVID hit, I'm going to bear down and get this thing done and get it out there. And Tap Space is fantastic. I've known Jim for a long time. They just always put out quality products, and excited it came out. Yeah,
we carry a lot of their stuff too. They're a good partner for sure. So what's on the horizon for you and your programs? I mean, I know you're doing camps right now. We know you're doing Music City and Bluecoats this coming summer. So do you slow down at all, dare I say, during the indoor season, or are you judging? Are you somewhere we don't know about yet? What's up around the next 3 or 4 months for you?
Yeah, we are, Vandegrift, we do Percussion Ensemble. That's kind of our focus this time of year. So don't slow down, that's for sure. Like I teach, start around tomorrow, I got a 7:15 sectional, and then I will teach pretty much straight through the day until about 4 o'clock. I'll get a, quick lunch break, but we're just cranking on Percussion Ensemble, which I love, for me, and I love marching percussion, don't get me wrong. Obviously, it's been a huge part of my upbringing, but it's always a great kind of breath of fresh air to do the Percussion Ensemble stuff. And honestly, with the writing for Music City Drum Corps, like I've borrowed ideas from some of the pieces we're playing, like just layering techniques and things like that. But Percussion Ensembles right now, and then Bluecoats, we set that drum line got set the last camp, so everything's locked and ready to go. Music City, we're real close. I think we're maybe we've set, I think 8 snares out of 9, kind of auditioning a few more students, I think. Same thing with kind of the bass line and the quad line. But that'll be set here shortly. And then we'll start the whole thing again, get into the summer and finish the semester. It's funny that the busiest month of the year sometimes is May for us, just because you're kind of winding down one season and starting up the next one, with marching band. So
the transition's never easy.
No, it's not. And that's one of those, like, there's something every night. You're just like, man, what is happening? I thought we were finishing this. And you're like, no, we're still going. So, but that's kind of on the horizon. Yeah. And then I said drum corps stuff this summer. Super excited about Music City and Bluecoats. And then and then Vandegrift, getting that thing rolling, keeping the machine moving forward.
It's quite the machine. One of the things that I did not mention was, you guys have had the opportunity to play at Midwest, to be at TMEA Honor Band, at PASIC, obviously, doing BOA and things. The Sudler Shield and Flag Awards in 2020, just a couple years ago, which is huge. So, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this time we've had with Joe, and he's so well-rounded and doing so many things that I encourage you to look at his book, because you know what he's about now. You know where he's coming from, and you know the kind of life he's led, the successes that he's had at the highest level of everything that there is to do. So Joe's a rock star doing this thing, and we hope that the stuff we've been able to bring you here today with him has been helpful for you to encourage your students, or if you are a student or a young instructor, to kind of plug in wherever and anywhere that you can. Like Joe suggested, grab some materials like his book, The Starting Line, and just make your dreams come true. Live it. That's what he's doing. So I'm going to let him live it and get back to his family and let him go for the night. Joe, thanks so much for coming on with us. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And thanks for the kind words about Steve Weiss Music. We're here for you as we always are. SteveWeissMusic.com. Feel free to give us a buzz. If you call the number and you press 2, you'll get our education department. Talk to those guys. They know how to talk to your business department. They know everything inside and out that you might need in the classroom, out on the football field. whatever it may be. We're here for you. So thanks for tuning in. We'll look for you in a couple more weeks. We'll continue to bring some more of these great folks to you. Thanks so much for watching.